responder section, and that is pacing, right? So the skill we're going to learn now is called Pacing Pro. And let's start by taking a look at an example of a lead time chart, right? So one of the keys around pacing is understanding lead time in your market. So this is a lead time chart, and let's add a little bit more information to it. Let's show you that on the y-axis here, we're going to show you the percentage of bookings that are occurring on any given day. So that x-axis, stretching out to the right here, is the number of days before a stay date, right? So in short, I can see on any day before a stay date, what percentage of total bookings occurred on that day. Now, as we likely all know, every market's lead time chart is different, right? This is what makes it a little bit harder. So let's just pretend that here we have an example market of San Francisco and New York City, and these are their lead time charts. Now, what do they tell us? Well, that chart for New York that was kind of lumpier in the far future, well, that would be an example of an early booking market, right? When we see a lot of bookings in the far future for a market, we call that an early booking market. And in this case, we're saying that 3.5% of all bookings occur 150 days from a stay date. Well, that can tell us a lot about your market. On the opposite end of this, a late booking market is a market where you see that curve kind of curve up at the end, right? So in this case, 3.9% of all bookings occur, quote unquote, late, 25 days before a stay date. Right? So there's different types of markets. We have early booking markets, we have late booking markets, and we have everything in between. Now, once we know what our booking curve is going to look like, the important thing to figure out first is our market's average lead time. How many days before the stay date, on average, do people book places? So in this case, this example, we're going to say that the average lead time in this market is 57 days. Well, let's say that once you knew that your listing's average lead time was 103 days. What can that tell us? Well, since you're booking way before the market usually books, you're likely underpriced. And again, to the contrary, should you book later than that consistently? Where, well, that might be a decent strategy and you might maximize revenue in some ways, you're also taking a lot more risk, and you're risking that your place won't be booked, especially during periods of low demand. So knowing your market's average lead time and then your listing's average lead time can be a very effective way to understand how you're pacing. So the key skill that we need to learn, Pacing Pro, is the ability to utilize lead time data to make sure you're selling the right listing at the right time and the right price. And per usual, let's step into the market report and let's see how Wheelhouse can help you learn a little bit more about this.
There are a number of ways we can figure out our market's lead time. So on the market reports page, again, you can see there's kind of a blended lead time curve, but we want to do a little bit of a deeper analysis. So yes, you could come and look at your lead time in a very specific time series, but an easier way that I find is if we go look at our lead time chart here, and now we're looking at probability of when bookings will occur. We're going to go back to November, and we're going to see that here it says 20 to 25 days out, 56% of all bookings are still yet to be made. So in San Francisco, for the average inventory type, 56% of all bookings occur in the last 25 days. Now, with that information, you can think about your property's lead time and when you often book. And if you're booking more quickly or more slowly than that, you can make adjustments in a couple of fashions. If overall you consistently book behind or ahead of the market, you can either adjust your base price to be more conservative or more aggressive or fully customized. You can set this to whatever you would like. Or if you're just pacing ahead or behind of a few months, you can again adjust your seasonality settings. So this is another way you can control how Wheelhouse's pricing engine will respond to your market. Of course, if you're automated, we'll be doing all this for you, but you always have final control to set your own settings and make your own adjustments, depending on what you're trying to achieve.
Great. So we've stepped into a slightly more complicated section of the market reports. However, I'm highly confident if you take the time to learn how those distribution curves work, there's a huge amount of valuable data that you can use there. So we're going to see a little more of that in just a few minutes in the presentation. But suffice to say, there we went, we learned about our market's lead time, and we made adjustments based on how we were pacing against it. Now, we can automate this as well, right? In fact, this might be one of the most important things about automating Wheelhouse. So when you automate, Wheelhouse can analyze your market every single night and compare how your listing is booking relative to your market, to your neighborhood, and even your comp set. And when automating, we can do this for every listing, every individual night in your portfolio. Since pacing is really hard, right? We saw how variable pacing could be in that last chart. This is the type of thing that software is really helpful for. So in particular in this section, the reason automation is important is not only does every market have its own lead time, every neighborhood has its own lead time. Every inventory type has its own lead time, right? One bedrooms are going to book a lot closer to a stay date than a large home. And every day has its own lead time curve, right? Holidays are going to book out a lot sooner than other days. We saw that on that earlier chart, which means this is kind of where automation can be really helpful. So remember this chart, we looked at this. This was not an exaggeration that lead time varies a huge amount every single day. And of course, if you get bookings or your portfolio gets bookings, your pacing is going to change too. So this is why automation is so valuable. And we're going to watch a quick video here for the third demand model that's going to help us blend kind of how we're booking, how our market's booking, and how everyone's pricing. So let's check it out here.
Another reason to consider automating with Wheelhouse is that we can help you pace your property perfectly. Now, pacing is already built into the Wheelhouse model, and we've seen some ways that we can control our pacing should we want to. But we're now back in the data science section. We've seen the predictive demand. We've seen the reactive demand models and how those work. And now we want to talk about blending. So what blending does is it leverages the best of the reactive model and the best of the predictive model to basically say, well, how is your listing and how is your market booking? And how is your listing and how is your market priced? So the blended model is actually the unified output of those two demand models. And what we can see is that our blended model, which is the final output you would see for any price in any given day, it's the blended model. What you can see is we're basically pacing off the whole market. So when your market bookings spike, we increase your prices. And this weighted curve here tells us how much of your prices on any given day are weighted to the reactive versus the predictive model. You can see in the far future, before bookings emerge, before there's any pacing signal for your market, the reactive model has no weighting. That means the predictive model controls all of our pricing. But as a stay date approaches, so now we're approaching January with these stay dates, you can see that the reactive model now makes up almost 100% of your recommendations. That means that this blended model is really looking at your market and seeing how your listing is pacing against that market and figuring out how to price you on any given night. And that is the benefit that you get to take advantage of should you choose to automate with Wheelhouse.
Great. So a lot of power in that automated aspect of Wheelhouse, no doubt about it. But also it's really important to understand it deeply, right? So once again, if you want to go to our blog to learn more about just how we're doing blending and pacing, you can do so at our blending and pacing models section. I think you're going to enjoy it, and that will lead you to our expert solution.